Happy New Year to all you homeopathy nerds out there. As we slide back into the rhythm of everyday life, we're going to revisit one of the most captivating episodes of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast. From Season 1, Episode 6, Alchemy, Romance and Rumors, Melanie Hahnemann. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been with us for over 100 episodes, this heartfelt and historically rich conversation is sure to tickle your curiosities. Our hosts, Denise Straiges and Alastair Gray, uncover a lesser-told chapter in homeopathy's story, one that blends alchemy, devotion, controversy, and the deeply human tale of Samuel and Melanie Hahnemann. Let's go.
We're underway.
Here we go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Here we are to talk about one of the coolest people.
One of the coolest people.
I think so.
Really?
And maligned. Most maligned.
Most maligned. Definitely maligned.
She was a trailblazer.
She was a trailblazer.
And
yes.
she was Ms. Melanie. Do her French name. Can you do it with the right accent?
Oh, Devilly.
Is that how you would say it?
Yeah, Melanie Devilly. D''Hervilly.
See, I want to hear someone with proper French, really.
Devilly.
Yeah.
Hahnemann. Melanie Hahnemann.
Yes.
Right, we're going to talk about Melanie Hahnemann.
Do you remember the first conversation? Sorry.
No, I was going to say this conversation could go in all sorts of different directions.
It sure could. Do you remember the first conversation we had about her?
Did we have a fight?
Well, it was interesting because it was, you fancy yourself historian of homeopathy, which you have the street cred to back up.
Mm. And
I'm a chick.
Yeah. No.
So you kind of look down your nose like...
Oh, at the time I looked down my nose?
Yeah.
Well, you were saying something that I found didn't really stack up. The evidence didn't really stack up to the conclusions.
Well, and do you feel the same way now?
I do. It's an interesting place we're starting at the end. I would say that I have learned a couple of factoids about the life of Melanie Hahnemann, which don't necessarily add up to the fact that she was
an amazing... Go ahead.
A gold-digging piece of work.
Yeah.
That behaved disgracefully and has really... And there's
not true. Simply not true.
And now not my opinion. And has been really, really written out of homeopathy history.
Which I think is crazy town.
Right. I agree with that part being crazy town. But I want to get to the four things later.
Okay.
That need explanation. She did four things that are inexplicable.
But I want to start with the idea of her being a gold digger and how amazing that term is.
Well, why don't we... Okay, go.
Because if, as my research suggests, Hahnemann really was an alchemist in the true sense of the 18th and 19th century word, meaning he had insights into chemistry and medicine, field of medical alchemy, that influenced the discoveries, and not just the discoveries in homeopathy, because he sort of made a few discoveries, like, when he was in Collins Materia Medica and, had this revelation about the law of similars, but rather as he evolved over time, he was utilizing ancient materials and putting together concepts from various places that had not been put together prior.
Correct.
And what that means is, people think about alchemy as being, sort of from Harry Potter and Nicholas Flamel. Nicholas Flamel being an actual, alchemist, or people, thinking of charlatans turning lead into gold. But in actuality, there is an entire, perspective and understanding of alchemy that is the sort of origins of chemistry and pharmacology that came together. So what does this mean with Hahnemann and the gold digger statement is, I think it's interesting that one of Hahnemann's primary biographers, Richard Hale, is in my research seems to be the person who may have known some of the secrets and left us a lot of breadcrumbs. And that term gold digger, I think, is no accident. That is the term that's often used about Melanie and her intentions. And so when you first brought that up, when we were having some of our first, conversations, checking each other out in terms of homeopathy cred.
Heated conversations.
Yeah, but that one, it really struck me because it's so commonly thought of in that way.
I would totally agree with that. And for me, when I said that and when I say it now, I say it tongue in cheek.
Sure.
And for another reason as well. But at the time, I think that's just what we do. Kind of, if we're looking at the arc of someone's life, or if we're looking at a topic from a historical perspective, we talk about it. Even in this book, I was having a look at Rima Handley's book earlier today. She devotes half a page to Hahnemann's life from his teenage years to meeting Hahnemann's first wife. So that's and
those are crucial years, because those years would include Vienna, Transylvania,
exactly,
Erlanger.
Yeah, and it's just and so my point, totally. And so I was just going, hang on, that's not very in depth.
Well, but that's the purpose. I mean, you're talking about her book, A Homeopathic Love Story, so.
Right. But what I'm also saying is that's I think what I've done with Melanie. I think it's just like, oh yeah, boom, I've heard 4 things about her and gone, okay, move on to more important matters. But I think what I've learned from hearing you on a number of occasions is that my 4 points in isolation don't equal the malignment. I
was having to say, well, being maligned, she has been maligned.
So is that a malignment?
I don't know. I've never heard it used.
A lack of alignment.
She needed a chiropractor.
She needed an adjustment.
But this is the thing with history, though. I mean, right? Because people, I think it's the thing with human nature. People get taken out of context. And it happens a lot in homeopathy.
Well, and we project a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think, and while we're kind of clearing our throats on this one, I don't think Hale helps. I don't think he's any fan of Melanie.
I would disagree.
Oh, wow.
Have you read all of the letters and all the supplemental materials?
No, not really. I read, what he wrote about the early days in Paris or something.
So I think he may not have been a fan, although I'm unsure about whether or not I would put those words in his mouth. But he did include in the supplements in Hahnemann's Life and Work, Volume 2, the letters that and
the letters between them.
The letters between Melanie and several people and Hahnemann's children. So all of this idea that how much they hated her. There are letters from Amelie. I think it was from Amelie. Was she the youngest or second youngest? I forget. Anyway, but calling her our little mother. And as we're talking about this, can I add one other thing while we're talking about sort of the way that history gets misrepresented going forward and the projections that people put on? I heard something not too long ago that really tweaked my irritation about misrepresentation. And it was, people talk about Hahnemann and money and that he didn't have any money. And I heard someone refer to it as the Hahnemann miasm, sort of saying homeopaths need to get out of this idea that a homeopath can't make money and that Hahnemann put that on. It's just not true. Hahnemann certainly had lean years. And I think that when you are trying to change an entire system and you're willing to do anything to get there, there are going to be some financial consequences. And he definitely had his times of having to leave a few places, trying to find his spot. But by the time he gets, halfway through his life, that was not a concern. And he had considerable wealth. And by the time they got to Paris, they actually lived quite a fine life.
Well, they sure did at the end. In fact, I read somewhere, it really stopped me cold, actually. Go a little off. Oh, no, we're on topic. But it was, he died a millionaire in modern money.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that's the thing I mean, who knows if he had $10 or $100, but that's the thing that really made me question that first point about Melanie being a gold digger, because she was loaded. She was a very wealthy woman.
But she did
in and of herself.
But she did renounce her family's wealth when she went to study art, and her mother, the mother was a piece of work.
She was a mad person.
Yeah, Melanie's mother was she was a bit of a shrew, and in Melanie's words, her mother was jealous of her and would, as Melanie went from being sort of a child to a woman, the mother got really jealous, and Melanie was the kind of kid who would rather read books and sit off quietly than go to the balls and the dances. When there was an invitation, Melanie's mother made her go, and then got mad at her for being, much loved and being a good dancer. So she was center of attention. Her mother didn't like that. So
I got a quote. Can I read you this one?
Yep.
She hated her mother. Her mother detested and maltreated us. Her rages resembled madness. My mother in her rages, which I never provoked, tore out my hair in handfuls, made my body black and blue by battering it. She disfigured me with her nails because she said I was prettier than she. I had too much spirit. One terrible day, I was in the country with my mother. My father was in Paris. My mother got herself into such a fury that she nearly killed me. I was 15 years old. She took a long, sharp knife and threw it at me. I lost my respect for her for the first time. I threw myself upon her in order to save her from a certain crime, and I fought with her. The knife wounded me in several places, but I tore myself away and I fled to Paris in the middle of the night. My father realized, oops, at last he would have to take sides and preserve me from death, and I got sent away to board with my painting teacher. Yeah.
So that's the way. I'm not sure where that quote comes from. She,
From my iPad.
From your iPad. So in Confidential Notes on the Life of Madame Hahnemann, Supplement 156 in Hale's Life and Work. So Melanie writes about how she was adopted by that art teacher. So she may have been sent off, but had such affection for those people. And she says, at 18 years of age, I studied art anatomy in a lecture room to which I had access when the pupils were absent. Can we just discuss for a second that? And one of my favorite things in studying the history of medicine was the courses that we did on the old studies of anatomy, and how there were the anatomists who were basically the mechanics, and then there were the artists who documented it, and looking at the style of anatomical art throughout the ages. And always wish somebody would do a movie about this.
There'd be a lot of nudes in that movie.
There'd be a lot of nudes. There'd be a lot of blood and guts, or maybe just the guts. But
I see. Right.
But this would be but what's so cool is there were these really tight relationships, because the anatomist and his artist would have to they would develop a style together, right? So the artist influenced the anatomist and vice versa. And just looking at those books, they are absolutely stunning.
So just say it again, because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So she, as an 18 years old, is studying art anatomy. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean?
So she was 18. So that was 1818. No, I'm just putting it in the context of.
But is she in a? She's not the muse being painted. She's studying the body, studying anatomy.
And it's so at that time, that's how they weren't taking photographs and videos. They weren't making YouTube videos of this. So there was an actual...
What, YouTube didn't exist in 1818?
Oddly enough, no. Artists were employed to document medical, procedures, medical discoveries, right? It's a fascinating subject. So anyway, she says, at 18 years of age, I studied art anatomy in a lecture room to which I had access when the pupils were absent. Of course, because women were not... allowed to do this work. Is one thing that's important. The other thing is, 1818. This is still Germany is the seat of sort of medicine and its discoveries, but it's moving to Paris. Bedside medicine, hospital-based and institutionalized medicine is starting to happen in Paris. So this was, you've got art, you've got culture, and you also have medicine becoming, right, so important at that time. She says, after having studied the external part of the human frame, I wished also to study its internal parts. And then, in spite of its loathsome side, I went right through the study of anatomy as the doctors do. I did this as I do everything, in the best way possible to me. I remained 16 years with Monsieur and Madame Laterre and was the soul of the family. Laterre, the father, left me by an act of will when dying the 2 children of his eldest son, to whom I gave the medicines belonging to Hahnemann. Monsieur and Madame died in my arms, blessing the day they had given me shelter and commended their family to my care. I have given in marriage 2 of their great-granddaughters and provided for them. My interest in medical studies persisted. I had studied physiology and pathology and found everywhere doubt and error. I heard everyone say that the doctors were asses, and I was justified in sharing the general opinion. Especially as being sometimes ill, I received no help from the remedies that the best physicians administered to me, and when my excellent friends, whom I dearly loved, were ill, I had the opportunity of continually realizing the insufficiency or the sad danger of the remedies employed for their treatment.
So she is systematically, as a young person, studying anatomy, then physiology. She can't do it openly.
Right. But she's dedicated to it. And going back, she talks about earlier in this treatise, she talks about how when she was a kid, when she was little, in the way that children would take apart their toys to see how they would work, she would dissect birds to understand what was happening inside of them. So she had not just...
She dissected birds?
She dissected birds. So she had artistic talent, and that's what she's giving credit for, is her talent as an artist and as a painter. But... the thread...
Well, she was writing poetry in the 1920s. Listen to this. In the 20s, she wrote poetry and became involved in French politics.
Right. And French politics of the time is so interesting. I mean, it's a bit of a diversion. But but this idea that she had this medical interest, right? And then she developed a problem for which she was not getting any kind of medical relief in Paris. She had what is referred to as a tic de la rue in her abdomen. And it was to the point where she couldn't even paint. And that's when she found the Hahnemann's Organon of Medicine and decided that very day that she was going to make her way to him.
A what?
What?
A tic?
A tic de la rue.
What is it?
I think we would now call it a spasm. Right? But here's something interesting, because one of the things I love about studying Hahnemann's story is how much information is missing. Every time I read something where there's a missing footnote or something has been rewritten in someone's hand, or, here in Hale says there are 2 different points, actually 3 different points in this treatise about Melanie, where he says... From this point forward, which is the point where she goes to Hahnemann, from this point forward, the draft and the final copy are totally different. It makes you wonder, Also,
are you implying that, she would have, as many people do, start altering the record or altering the paper trail? These days it would be... getting a company to sanitize your online presence.
To scrub your online presence.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think, what has been interesting for me, and this is why I've tried so hard to find more information about Hale, and there's not much. If anybody knows, if anybody has any information about Richard Hale, who was German, I believe, by birth, he did come to America, and he studied with Herring here in Philadelphia.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Because it's a strange spelling of the name, isn't it? What is it?
It's Haehl. Richard Hale. So anyway, I sort of got on this trail in the 6th edition of the Organon, in the footnote to Aphorism 270, where there's a part of the footnote that the original copy has been, removed, and some of it was written in Hale's hand. Now, I mean, that's a story for another day, but that's where the 6th edition of the Organon and that aphorism, that footnote, is the very detailed instructions on how to make the LM potency, the Q potency.
So, in other words, the historian is getting very, very involved in the writing of the history.
Appears to be.
Maybe too much.
I don't know. I mean, or, if we hold on to that alchemical thread, if we pull that thread through, if the Q potency is when Hahnemann was finally able to release spirit from matter, and the 6th edition of the Organon was, in Melanie's possession. And, some people would say, going back to the gold digger thing, that she wanted so much money for it. But Hahnemann said to her, don't publish it until the time is right. And so I think two things can happen at the same time. She could have held on to it, and then realities converge, right? Because, there were a lot of things happening in France at that time. And Melanie lost a lot of money later in life, and she was desperate to continue the work that Hahnemann had implored her to do, on his deathbed.
So I've learned a bunch of stuff, but she's artistic and scientific.
Yeah.
She's a poet and a painter and a writer.
Which makes her perfect as a homeopath, the art and science.
Right. She's got a formal, informal.
Oh wait, so sorry. I just want to say one thing. Where I was going, and I forgot the denouement was that. So she arrives to Hahnemann with this tic de la rue. Well, the page of her case notes when she went to him for a medical consultation, those case notes are missing.
I mean, so
it's the early HIPAA. I mean,
right? Yeah, the tearing out of the casebook of the notes
about Melanie's first visit.
Yeah, right. So that's Hahnemann's casebook.
Hahnemann's casebook.
Do you think that? I mean, any speculation?
I mean, please. I'm always speculating. I'm Sicilian.
Well, was it her
always
or
looking
him
for
or
signs.
someone else?
I mean, who knows? That's why I think there's so much more that we need to know. That's why I think her story is one that we really need to understand, because if we, history is written through the lens of the questions a person asks. And so if the history of homeopathy, written by people like Hale and Bradford and Hanley, if they weren't, and others, and, but if the history of Hahnemann, if no one is asking the questions and sort of reaching in to everything that doesn't add up and following those trails, I mean, as I presented in my conference presentation at the JAHC last year, and in this, here's a little plug, we're doing a kickoff to the new year with 3 lectures, one from Al, one from Kelly Callahan, and one from me. And mine is going to be more on the history, sort of the alchemical history of homeopathy, digging deeper into that. And what I uncovered is, and I think this is why I'm so interested in the Melanie story, is there are all these little dead ends in history where people just make assumptions. Oh, Hahnemann wasn't into alchemy because he denounced Paracelsus. Well, as if Paracelsus was the only alchemist in 1,000 years. I mean, and so there were a lot of assumptions that were made, and so I'm trying to dig into that. Anyway, so every time something doesn't add up, or every time there's a clue, it's like, well, why? You have to ask the question why, and then challenge the stated historiography to see if there's something deeper that we can find out. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go back to where you were.
I have no idea where I was.
We'll find a good place.
Well, let's go that she's 34 years old, and she puts on. And then she puts on a suit, jumps in a carriage, and travels across France.
Again, according to Hale.
To Germany.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, I mean, that's a long journey. I mean, back in the day, that's a brave thing to do. And it's... I mean, I suppose I've always thought to myself, okay, well, travelling as a single woman wouldn't necessarily be the safest, so why not put on the garb of a bloke? But is it as simple as that?
It's not. I think it's kind of funny, right? And again, according to Hale, so the story goes that Melanie arrived dressed as a man. Now, in substantiating what you said, like a woman traveling alone, there is in Melanie's own words, in her own hand, the stories of her saying she actually didn't enjoy the company of some people, whether it be men or women, and she would rather, she didn't want to have to sort of deal with people just for the sake of dealing with them.
I've got a quote on that. I prefer going about with men, for no sensible word can be addressed to a woman.
Right. So, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. And it's possible that I haven't seen this, but I've only seen it from Hale, who it may be from him directly, or he was sort of making corrections to Bradford, whose history came before. But I want to know if Melanie says she went dressed as a man, or because in alchemy, so in an alchemical story, there for every male alchemist is the female counterpart. And it's not just because there's a male and a female part, it's that these two binary halves come together in wholeness, and there is a transcendence of the binary. So coming out of this idea of, the maleness, the femaleness to join together in perfect unity and the transcendence thereof. And so in a lot of the alchemical stories, there are women dressed as men or men dressed as women, or this concept of androgyny where one can't tell. And that's sort of a transcendent moment. It's interesting because there's also in alchemy this idea of the sacred hermaphrodite. So in other words, a person born of both, of both gender. And that idea is, or to create, to be the sacred hermaphrodite, again, transcends that, that binary expression. And there were all sorts of experiments over time to create the perfect person, right? The perfect entity. So there were, and this kind of lore goes into many areas. The idea of the homunculus.
Wow.
So Paracelsus attempted to make the homunculus, which was, basically sort of the spontaneous generation of a human. And, we could go on. I mean, this is a doctoral thesis in and of itself, but, carried to its logical conclusion, you can see sort of some of the ancient stories, like the Christ story. You can see the alchemical metaphor, studying the Christ story. So the idea of being born of virgin birth, right? And so that can be equated to Sora, right? So this idea that Jesus was born without sort of the sort of post Garden of Eden stain, is a really interesting metaphor for Sora. Now, sometimes people go, oh, that's just, that's a story that's been made up and blah, blah, blah. But actually, seen through the alchemical lens and the historical context, all of a sudden it becomes a metaphorical corollary, right? And carried forward into, say, the Catholic Mass. This idea of the transmutation of water and wine into the body and blood of Christ is a really interesting metaphor that translates directly into some of the, alchemical allegories and metaphors that have been carried out throughout time. So taking this back to Melanie, it could just be that Melanie was dressed as a man because she didn't want to travel, with people. But it's also a very interesting thing that someone who may have discovered the elixir of life, Hahnemann, and his counterpart turns up, and there you have it. Is this the sacred hermaphrodite, or did Melanie just wear pants? I don't want to like put too much into it, but it is really compelling.
Well,
is that going to freak people out?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
I hope
not.
not.
What should freak them out is the fact that there's a clear breach of the code of ethics because she walked in the door of Hahnemann's office and she didn't leave for 3 days. And, I mean...
Okay, wait, but we just need to put this in context. He was 79.
So he's 79 years old. So let's do the math. She's 34. He's 79.
October...
Is that 45?
October 8th, 1834.
October the 8th, 1834. So that's 45 years different. Is that like Leonardo DiCaprio and his...
I just call that Hahnemann's cougar years.
Hahnemann's cougar years. Who else do you know, either in movies or, I don't know, has engaged in a relationship?
45 years.
45 years different.
It's pretty amazing.
So to me, when I hear that, It's like, they were in love.
Oh my gosh.
His letters about Melanie to Berninghausen and his letters, to the other homeopaths he was a glowing, reborn.
Uh-huh.
He was in a state.
Well, yeah. But also, think about alchemy. The elixir of life is the ability to, live, if not forever, for an extended period of time. It is the elixir of life. It is putting life back into an organism. Right? Anyway, so, and there's more to be said about that with the end of his life, but here Melanie says, Hahnemann wished to marry me, and his friends who had learned to appreciate my character did all they could to persuade me to accept his offer. It was only natural that I should hesitate. It was not the outlook of having to nurse a noble old man that frightened me, but the fear of losing him too soon and missing him so much that I might die of grief. How about that?
It's funny. I'm always it's funny. When you read an autobiography, or when you read, I'll just say it. When you read the sanitized, edited version of someone's own life,
yeah,
I'm always suspicious. I'm not suspicious, but it's like, hang on, just a minute. There's a narrative here, and you're trying to push the narrative. In that instance, I'm more taken with what Hahnemann wrote in letters to other people, which totally is in alignment with what she said.
Yeah.
It's just astonishing. So it wasn't like, okay, you're an old bloke and I'll nurse you. It is, profound. It's a profound relationship. Now, and Johanna's been dead a few years. And I think
that was his first
thing.
Wife. Yeah.
So
Johanna Henrietta.
Johanna Henrietta, or sometimes Henrietta Johanna. She is, God, if there's a biography that needs to be written.
Hers?
No one knows anything about her.
Yeah.
She is an historical footnote. We know the names of the 13 or the 11 surviving kids, and very little else. We've got the letter to the editor, or the notice in the newspaper on the day that she got married, daughter of, blah, blah.
And daughter of, and what did her father do?
Johanna's father?
Yeah.
Was a vicar, wasn't he? No, I didn't know.
He's a chemist, pharmacist.
Oh, he's a pharmacist. Of course.
And so Hahnemann, that was when he met her, right after Erlanger, yeah? Shortly thereafter. He was on his travels.
She was born in 1764. And she died in 1830.
Oh, so it wasn't that long. 4 years.
4 years. And he was being looked after by the daughters.
By the two daughters. So, just in
terms of... Johanna's dad was a chemist.
Yeah. Huh. So, on Hahnemann's watch chain, it was engraved, "My life to yours is closely bound, to your happiness devoted. My place in your noble heart I found. No other in this world do I desire." She says, when he died, the whole story of his last days is really, I think there's so much to be talked about there, and I think it's probably its own podcast. But I think, though, just some of the stories about Melanie and her devotion and love of him, but also her work. He completely entrusted her. She was his, closest companion. She translated for him so that he could move more quickly through his cases. She says because he was taking, he was always taking notes. He had her memorize Materia Medica Pura, and really kind of drilled her until she was able to, memorize that. And then when they were living in Paris, one of my favorite stories is told by was an American, was she an actress who happened to be in Paris and comes to have care by Hahnemann. And she tells the story of how in front of their house, which was a very, sort of welcoming, house on a major street, there were lines of carriages out front waiting to drop people off to be seen by Hahnemann and by Melanie. And so Hahnemann would work in the morning seeing patients, but by the time this woman was there, I'd have to check the date. But Hahnemann was like, she describes him as this little old man in a cloud of smoke from his pipe, and Melanie doing, all the work. And that Melanie would see patients with Hahnemann in the morning, and then in the afternoon she would tend to the poor, and she would provide, provisions for them, basically so that they could heal. Because she says, that basically it's obstacles to cure. If they don't have food, if they don't have the clothing, if they don't have what they need, they're not going to heal. So from 1 o'clock until the last person was seen, Melanie would, she would treat all of the patients. So. And she really, she worked hard. She was a workhorse. And when Hahnemann died, he asked her to continue on. And she was like, I'm tired. She says, my hair is white. I can't do this anymore. And, he gives his line, the life of ease is not for anybody who's going to do homeopathy. Yeah, he actually didn't say that then. He said at the end of his life, let's see here. Oh, actually, this is beautiful here. 2 days before leaving me, he said to me, I have chosen you among all my disciples, and I leave you my scientific heritage, which is of some importance to humanity. Continue to work as we have done for such a long time. Carry on my mission. You know homeopathy, and you know how to cure as well as I do. I replied, but I am a woman. My body has grown tired. My hair has become white under the strain of this difficult work. I have well earned a little rest. Rest, said Hahnemann, and raised himself up in his bed. Have I ever rested? Forward, ever forward, against the wind, struggle against the strain, always cure, and everywhere, and by constantly curing you will compel justice be done to you. Current opinion will support you respectfully after having opposed you on your path. So he recognized,
We got that bit wrong.
Yeah.
Well, the police came knocking.
Well, but also this part, we should go back to the part where he was writing letters to Herring to get Melanie a diploma from the Allentown Academy.
Well, that's an interesting one. So they moved to Paris in 1835 in February, right?
Yeah.
And there's 3 moves within Paris, or 2 moves.
And when they left, so the provision in their marriage decree is that she would take nothing from him, not a penny.
Really?
Even all of the marital gifts were left to the children, and everything was to be given away. Yeah, I'll find that for you. Yeah, there's a letter. I have the letter from the lawyer.
Really?
Yeah. Public declaration of the truth. Listen here. So this is the report in 1835. This was in. I can't read this. It's in German, but it was a German paper. The reports concerning the marriage of Hofrath Dr. Samuel Hahnemann of Cotten with Miss Marie Melanie d'Hervely Goyer of Paris, published in the Doifritztung and in some Berlin newspaper, are wholly lies and partly infamous slander, with the sole exception of the fact that such a wedding did take place. It cannot be but agreeable to the better class of public to learn the truth, and I, who drew up the marriage settlement between the married couple and between Dr. Hahnemann and the children of his first wife, and have therefore the most accurate knowledge of the circumstances, believe this declaration to be due both to the couple I so highly esteem and to the public. Yeah? The marriage has not on either side any ambiguous subordinate purpose whatever. The old man, grown gray with incessant work, much persecuted and aggrieved, but highly respected by all his more intimate acquaintances, soon experienced in his conversation with Madame d'Hervely, who had come to him as an invalid to be treated, a higher enjoyment of life than he had previously surmised. And this elicited a profound desire to end the last days of his stormy life in quiet cheerfulness and in cordial union with her who was responsible for this higher happiness. The wife, who comes from a highly respectable and wealthy family and is 35 years old, possesses considerable unencumbered property of her own. She is talented, was educated in art and science. She became a painter and a poet, and has proved, but above all, she is a person greatly honored and renowned by the most respectful people in her country. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on to say. So then, both of them, of unselfish and sensitive dispositions, made only 2 stipulations of the marriage. One, that she should receive no portion whatever of the whole property of Hofrath Hahnemann, either during his lifetime or at his death, but that all of it should go to his children and grandchildren without the slightest abatement. Number 2, that Hofrath Hahnemann should immediately assign his property to the said children and grandchildren. Now, how does this become that she's a gold digger, and he signs it. He says these are facts, and there are a couple more things basically of how the distribution of wealth and goods. They didn't take a stick of furniture, right? So he says, I conclude this declaration with the information that the noble-hearted wife of Dr. Hahnemann has gloriously attained her object and that she finds her own satisfaction and the reward for many a sacrifice in the unmistakable happiness of her husband. Shame on him who intends to disturb the peace of this couple by slanderous lies.
And there were slanderous lies. She was, they were, and the community, because by the 20s and the 30s, the homeopathy community was far spread around the world.
Yeah.
And, and he was the noble, founder. And the news broke that, he'd met a young one and was moving to Paris. And it got ugly.
And this poor woman who, worked so hard.
Right.
And... and the fact, I just think it's irresponsible that in 2022, people continue to spread misinformation.
Lies.
Telling all the lies. It's a waif song.
It's a good song.
It's a very good song.
So, all right. So we get to the 30s and the mid 1830s. They're in Paris, and then living the high life. He's going to the opera.
Yeah.
He's treating the famous folks. He's treating Paganini, with his syphilitic cankers.
all that syphilis.
All that syphilis.
You could add a whole business on syphilis at that time. Dear Louise.
And because they're living in the Rue de Milan, and the carriages are pulling up on the outside, and presumably, the fees are being paid, and things are going well. So, and one of the notes I remember is that his practice is full of the French nobility, which is recovering after the revolution. I mean, it's 30 years, I suppose, but things are settling down back to the old ways in France, and then he gets ill, and eventually dies of pneumonia, right?
Yeah. I found the story of the American actress.
Yeah.
It tells about the house.
Yeah, that's it. Let's
just real quick, and then we'll talk about his death, though. So the American actress, she was Anna Cora Moat, and she visited Hahnemann in Paris in 1839, and then she wrote a series of essays in which was an account of her visit to Hahnemann. And she says, in the winter of 1839-40, I paid my first visit to Hahnemann to ask his advice about a friend who was ill. In order to have a consultation as early as possible, I took a cab at 9 o'clock, and after approximately half an hour, the cab driver stopped but did not descend from his seat. I asked him if we had arrived. He answered, "No, madame, it is not our turn yet. We must wait a little." "There is Hahnemann's house," he said, pointing to a palatial building which was visible some distance away. The house was surrounded by a massive wall, in the middle of which was an iron gate. Becoming impatient at the delay, I leaned out of the carriage window and saw a long row of carriages in front of us, which drove one after another through the gate and came out again as soon as their occupants had descended. This was very annoying to me. She was American, after all. This was very annoying to me, as I had such pains to arrive sufficiently early and now found out that it had been all useless. I saw behind me a similar row of carriages which increased in number each minute. Thus I had taken my place in a procession which moved slowly onward to pay homage to this modern Asclepius. Isn't that amazing to think? So people spreading this, like the Hahnemann miasm, no money, blah, 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 is so ridiculous. I think it says, as Hahnemann would say, it takes hard work. But he paved the way with the hard work. We just now have to demonstrate, the capacity to take it forward. Anyway, don't get me all hopped up.
No, don't get it riled up.
No.
Well, I do want to rile you up because there's three things that happen immediately after his death.
Oh, dear.
So, number one, she doesn't tell anyone he's dead. Number two, she hides the book. And number three, she buries him in the pauper cemetery.
But those are all mostly true, except that people did know he was dying. Who was there? Sorry, I have to find my notes on this.
While you're looking for it, so to that first point, it's summer in Paris in 1843. If you've been in Paris in the summer, it's not cold. And she lay with the body for a week.
11 days.
11 days.
11 days.
Not a week, but 11 days. Now, there's got to be, in my language, 35 degrees, 40 degrees. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
So I'm trying to remember who it was. She wouldn't let anyone see him the last days. She lay there with him for a couple of days. Somebody had gone a couple days before.
Yeah, you told me about this one.
I want to say Frederick, but he was the hunchback with the long coat.
Yeah.
Friedrich, right? So who... Oh, you know who it must have been?
Was it gross?
No. It wasn't gross. No, it was... Melanie's adoptive daughter, Sophie, and Berninghaus's son.
Mm-hmm. Carl.
Oh, it wasn't them. It wasn't them. Anyway, I'll find it. But there are so many interesting things. So first of all, she lay with him for 11 days.
Yeah.
And then she didn't tell anybody. She didn't make a big announcement. So just a handful of people came, and in the rain, they had a funeral procession to the pauper's funeral. The embalming...
The cemetery in Montmartre.
Yeah, and the embalming was not done by the usual embalmer. It was done by his son. And Melanie says she oversaw it. And then there was, in the coffin, there was a little scroll in a little bottle in the actual coffin, which was made of lead, by the way, which I don't know if that's unusual. That just struck me as somewhat unusual. But it was in the proof of embalming was left in the coffin. Here, this was... so then years later, 55 years after his death in 1898... There had been, a couple of times there had been this, there would be these flurries of, where is he buried? We can't find him.
Outrage.
It was an unmarked grave. And 55 years later, the Americans get it together to raise enough money to move him to an appropriate, burial place. And a whole bunch of people come and, and then he's exhumed, right? Which, exhumation... All the alchemists get exhumed because, you want to make sure they're actually dead. So in the presence of the police commissioner, the workmen lifted the coffin out of the vault. It was placed upon planks which covered the hole made when Madame Hahnemann was disinterred. Dr. Ganal, who supervised the work, remarked that Hahnemann's lead coffin was only screwed down and not soldered, and expressed to the physicians the fear that the body might not have been well preserved. The workmen removed the screws and levered those which time had injured. The leaden cover begins to open a little, and those present see Hahnemann's feet wrapped in linen resting against the side of the coffin. They appear well preserved, but as more screws are forced out and the cover opens wider, it is seen that there is water in the coffin, and the fear that the body might not be preserved increases. At last, the lid is completely removed, and Hahnemann's body, wrapped in silken bandages, becomes visible. The structure of the body is shown under the bandages used in embalming, appears to be well preserved. The corpse is slightly shrunken, but what astonishes particularly those present is the smallness of Hahnemann's stature. We ask those who knew Hahnemann, we receive the answer that the founder of homeopathy was indeed a small man. The body is lying in water. The fluid is not produced by embalming, but by water which has filtered in from outside. The bottom of Montmartre Cemetery, as experts state, is constantly permeated with water, which flows along the clay soil formation. Anyway, so the embalmer had... covered his head with pieces of cotton wool saturated with essences. And they removed them, and there had been enameled eyes placed in the orbits. And they said it was impossible to recognize Hahnemann's features, but there were a number of objects in the coffin that guaranteed the authenticity.
And a lock of Melanie's
hair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then the point is, from that, so that's so fascinating. Is then they put him in a carriage and they took him across town to the east, and to the cemetery, Père Lachaise.
Yeah.
And there he is with all of the wealthy and rich and famous folks of Paris, along with some imports as well. like Jim Morrison.
I was just going to say that.
I saw Jim Morrison's grave in 1987, and it wasn't even a tomb. There wasn't a tomb. It was just flat dirt and a whole lot of graffiti.
Really?
Everywhere. Yeah, and the emanations of cannabis coming from the earth. And then when I went back in the 90s, they put a tombstone in for Jim Morrison.
I wonder who did that.
But all sorts of other people are there too, like Oscar Wilde and Edith Piaf.
Here's
and then Hahnemann.
And now it's a beautiful.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Here, I found it. This is Dr. Sus Hahnemann's letter of June 24th, 1896, to Dr. Platt of Philadelphia. My grandfather had the poorest and meanest funeral. He was buried very early in the morning. Unfortunately, it rained the whole time. Whilst the bearers were carrying the coffin down the stairs in the house at Rue de Milan, a painful altercation occurred between Madame Hahnemann and the men. These had put the heavy coffin down too suddenly on the stairs, and Madame was afraid not that the coffin might be damaged, but the banister. She therefore was more anxious about the ladder than the coffin. So he apparently didn't have good things to say about her. We walked behind the hearse, a very poor-looking procession to the Montmartre. When we arrived at the open tomb, there was already another unpleasantness. It was an old vault built of brick, which already contained two other coffins. I ascertained that one coffin contained the body of a Mr. Gohier and the other the body of Mr. Leterre. The coffin of my grandfather was too big and would not go into the tomb. The men tried for a time to force it in. Finally, they were obliged to tear off the stone lid, and thus at last poor Hahnemann found rest and peace. The grave is number 8. So, there was...
Now, Sus Hahnemann is the husband of one of the daughters, and he adopted her name and then went to practice in London.
Ah, that's who it is.
I've got some details.
Did he come to America?
Don't know.
And it's interesting that there's the wrong date on the death certificate.
Yeah, Amelie. So Amelie married Sus Hahnemann.
Oh, it was
Dr. Leopold
Amelie.
Sus. And he adopted Hahnemann's name because it was good for business.
Sure.
And as a homeopathic physician in London in 1895. That's interesting, isn't it? So
Yar had been there. Yar had been...
it was Yar.
It was Yar.
Got it.
So he went to visit Hahnemann on his birthday, and he says that Hahnemann had his usual spring bronchial catarrh, and it had attacked him so violently that his wife would not admit anyone. He was several times reported to be dead. This, however, was contradicted. So it's just quite interesting. I mean, there are so many controversies.
So, I mean, and then there's... so she buried him in the wrong tomb. And then I totally hear your side of the third point that I made before, which was that she deliberately hid the book. And when I say hid the book, everyone knew that Hahnemann was rewriting the fifth edition of the Organon to the sixth. And everyone knew, because he'd been very upfront about it, that he was changing the method of manufacture, and he was changing the administration of the remedies and all the rest of it. And then, when it comes time for, Melanie, where's the book? She went dark on it.
Yeah, there is a letter from Hahnemann dictated in April 1842. No, sorry. This is Paris, 1842. And it's about the 6th edition of the Organon. He says, if God wills, it will appear in French. Can't be printed in German by his old publisher because of his archenemy Trinks, who gives Arnold orders on how he is to annoy me. I think that's really funny. His arch enemy Trinks, who gives...
We've all got a nemesis.
I know, but that he's so... to think about Hahnemann saying, my arch enemy who gives the publisher, information on how to annoy me. So he wishes to prevent Trinks to... no. Anyway, it looks as if he was going to publish, But then... he says, he writes that I took the whole of homeopathy from Paracelsus, but have concealed it.
Trinks.
Yeah. And Hahnemann says that I actually...
let's not go down that.
I can't go down that path. But it's interesting because he said to Melanie, "Don't publish it until the time is right."
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think Rima Hanley writes about that. So so poor Melanie, and it's just, I think it's a good lesson for us. Before you malign another, ask questions.
Well, again, some of those points along the way, because there's another one, because she died in 1878. But in 1875, she then wrote to various professional associations and said, I do have the book, and you can have it, but I want some money. And it wasn't a small amount of money. It was an astronomical amount of money that she was asking for. And again, I think, if you just put those four points together.
Fair enough.
I think it's kind of understandable that you'd go, whoa, that's she's no friend to the community.
Yeah.
I think you've really helped me understand much more about her grieving process and all of that.
It was profound. But there's also, and this I don't have top of mind, she does write about her reasons. In her letters, her reasons for asking for money. I mean, she did fall on some financial hardship, right?
Well, there's a couple of other things we've not talked about. One is that I'm short on the date now, but over on this side of the Atlantic, the Allentown Academy got going in 1835, and it closed soon afterwards because the funder pulled the money, because of the crash and whatever it was, 1838. But, and while there were no students, there is, in Julian Winston's Faces of Homeopathy, a very interesting and questionable document which shows that after the school had closed, they started handing out diplomas. And the first person that got a diploma was Herring. The second one was Jean or Jean, I presume, because he had a French name. And then Lippi got one. And then Madame Hahnemann got a diploma, along with other, like there's some Russian physician, someone in Naples.
Well, Hahnemann requested the diploma.
Right.
He writes to Herring. He wrote a letter to Herring, March 28th, 1841. He says, Dear friend, how are you and your two boys? I hope I may receive very good news from you. I would like to know if you become more familiar with our homeopathic practice, which of course is very laborious. I and my dear wife together cure a strikingly large number of patients. She cures in the later hours of the day many poor patients, and to my surprise, some of the worst kinds of diseases. And he goes on to say how all the patients that they get, even in the summer, there are so many homeopaths, few really good ones, blah, blah, blah. He says, if I have been correctly informed, your academy grants diplomas to good homeopaths. If that is so, you would confer a favor upon me if you would send one to my dear wife, Marie Melanie Hahnemann nee D'Herville, for she is better acquainted with homeopathy, both theoretically and practically, than any of my followers, and I may say lives for our art. And he sent him 2 little cameos to show what they look like. He says, these cameos will give you a fairly correct representation of my head. Oh my gosh. And he says, the copperplate engraving of the whole is a good likeness, only the artist has taken me in an unfortunate moment when I was probably vexed by the bad behavior of the bastard homeopaths of Germany. There is no trace in it of the kind-heartedness seen in my features. And he wrote him again. He had to ask him a couple of times. He wrote him again asking for a doctor's diploma for my dear wife.
Well, you think about it, because if time's up and time's ticking, and she's obviously been practicing medicine without a license.
Yep.
What's the plan? And having a diploma would have helped, but it didn't help in the end, did it? Because she got busted. She got busted.
She got fined. Yep.
And fined, and then did she end up practicing under the what do you call it? Under the something?
Yeah,
under
like
the wing.
Yeah,
under the wing of a physician long after Hahnemann's death.
Yeah. Wow.
So what a story, huh?
What a story. She is.
It's an arc.
I feel really good that I got to dress as her.
Oh, you look fantastic. In fact, I felt an imposter because, here I am at the sprightly age of 55.
At the time.
And there you were looking... You were looking 35, 34.
Gee, thanks.
But I certainly wasn't feeling or looking 80. And
don't sell yourself short. No. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But the wig. So we got to dress. So the Americans for Homeopathy Choice, Paolo Brown had an event. It was really fun. It was at the Joint American Homeopathy Conference last year, whatever, 2022. And so various folks from the community got to dress as esteemed homeopaths, and we had the absolute honor of getting to be Hahnemann and Melanie. I was beyond excited
Ron Whitmore
for that.
did a good Kent.
Oh my gosh, he was an amazing Kent. Yeah, that was really good.
And Alex Becker as an immaculate herring.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Anyway,
really was.
We were really lucky for that. Okay, what a fun way to spend a morning.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that.
Let's do it again.
All right then.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care, folks.
You know about arnica. You've helped with a cough before. But what happens when your go-to remedies stop working? When symptoms move, change shape, or just don't make sense anymore? That's when it's time to get help from someone trained. At Homeopathy Help Now, you get real homeopathic care with student practitioners supervised by certified professionals. It's thoughtful, safe, and affordable. Visit homeopathyhelpnow.com to request a consultation today.